channel. Today we have a fascinating topic to dive into. Today we're going to talk about Niger and Nigeria, two neighboring countries in West Africa that share more than just a border. You hear about them in the news, right? Often the headlines are filled with stories of conflict, poverty, and political instability. Things aren't great over there. The people of Niger and Nigeria face numerous challenges, from economic hardships to social unrest. But before we get into it, let's be clear, this isn't just some random problem in Africa. It's a complex issue with deep historical roots. This is about history, power, and who's in charge. The legacy of colonialism has left a lasting impact on these nations. Niger and Nigeria are like neighbors who share a yard but don't get along. Their relationship is complicated by historical and economic factors. One's struggling, the other has oil money, but both have problems. Nigeria, with its oil wealth, faces corruption and inequality, while Niger struggles with poverty and lack of resources. And guess who caused a lot of those problems? The colonial powers that once ruled over them. Older countries like France and the UK, their colonial policies drew arbitrary borders and exploited local resources. I'm not saying France and the UK are completely to blame, but their actions have had long-lasting consequences. They didn't exactly leave things in good shape when they left Africa. The borders they drew have led to ongoing conflicts and divisions. They made messy borders, took resources, and left a mess that's still causing trouble. The exploitation of resources has led to environmental degradation and economic disparity. This isn't about blaming anyone, it's about understanding the situation and the historical context. It's about understanding the situation and figuring out how to help Niger and Nigeria find peace. International cooperation and local efforts are key to building a better future. Because when your neighbor's house is on fire, everyone is affected. We all have a role to play in supporting these nations and fostering stability in the region. Okay, so Niger and Nigeria have a long history together, right? I'm talking family ties, shared cultures, everything. These two nations are like siblings, separated by those European countries. Imagine this, the Hausa, Fulani, and Tuareg people. They don't see a border when they look across the river, they see family, shared traditions, a history that was there long before any lines on a map. And it's not just family. For a long time, Niger and Nigeria's economies were connected. Trade routes, goods going back and forth, they depended on each other, or at least they used to. But things got complicated. When other countries interfere, even strong families can have problems. Add competition for resources, political problems, and power struggles, and things get messy. So, we've got history, economic ties, and shared culture. But what turned this tension into a crisis? Get ready, because things get intense. Niger, already struggling, has a military takeover. Not good, right? Nigeria is fighting its own battles with groups like Boko Haram causing trouble. Now, add climate change. The Sahel region is drying up fast. Farmers are struggling, there are fewer resources, and people are desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. And when armed groups offer a way out, even a violent one, it's tempting. Suddenly the border between Niger and Nigeria isn't just a line, it's a battleground. I know this sounds complicated, and it is. But if we want to find solutions, we have to look deeper, past the news, to the real causes of this mess. Let's start with poverty. When people can't afford food, education and jobs become impossible. And when hope fades, that's when dangerous groups become attractive. Then there's bad government. Corruption, no accountability. Leaders who care more about money than their people. It creates instability. And let's not forget about what the European countries did. The unfair borders, the exploitation, the systems that benefited them, not the Africans. Those wounds are still there. But understanding the causes isn't about dwelling on the past. It's about understanding the present so we can build a better future. Until we fix these problems, the cycle of poverty, instability, and violence will continue. Section 5. Scars of conflict. A human toll. A region in peril. Okay, let's talk about the real consequences of this situation. While politicians play games, everyday people suffer. And they suffer a lot. We're talking about families torn apart, forced to leave their homes and live in crowded camps. We're talking about kids who can't go to school, their childhood stolen by fighting. We're talking about a generation scarred by what they've seen. And it's not just people. The economy is suffering too. Trade stops, businesses close, and no one wants to invest. The longer this goes on, the harder it will be for these countries to recover. But here's the big problem. This isn't just Niger and Nigeria's problem. It's a regional crisis that could spread and destabilize the whole Sahel. And guess who's watching this very closely? Section 6. Neo-colonial shadows, the hidden hands of influence. This section delves into the intricate web of influence that former colonial powers still weave in their ex-colonies. It's a story of power, control, and subtle manipulation. Now you might be thinking, wait, I thought we were done talking about France and the UK? Well, not quite. Their legacy is far from over and their presence is still felt in many ways. They're not solely to blame, but they're still involved. The influence of these countries extends beyond mere historical ties. It permeates modern politics, economics, and even social structures. Even though they don't officially control these countries anymore, they still have a lot of influence. This influence is often exerted through diplomatic channels, economic agreements, and military alliances. Economic interests, military deals, political games, it's all happening. Take France, for example. Their involvement in Africa is multifaceted and deeply entrenched. They have a long history with Niger, especially with uranium mining. This relationship has been both a boon and a bane for the local population, and those uranium deals haven't helped the people of Niger much. The wealth generated often flows back to France, leaving the local communities impoverished and struggling. Coincidence? I don't think so. The disparity in wealth distribution is stark and telling. It's a clear indication of the ongoing exploitation. And then there's the UK, with its own interests in the region. Their influence is equally pervasive, albeit in different forms. From security to counterterrorism, they're involved in both Niger and Nigeria. Their military presence is often justified as a means to combat terrorism, but it also serves their strategic interests. I'm not saying they're trying to do bad things, but they're not always acting selflessly. Their actions are often driven by a mix of altruism and self-interest. The point is, we can't talk about solutions without talking about these outside influences. Any attempt to address the issues in these regions must consider the role of these external powers. As long as they're involved, finding lasting peace will be difficult. The path to true independence and self-determination is fraught with challenges, but understanding these hidden hands of influence is the first step. Section 7. Charting a path forward. Solutions for a shared future. Okay, we've talked about the history, the causes, the impacts, and the hidden influences, but none of that matters if we don't talk about solutions. What's the point of identifying a problem if you don't try to fix it? So, where do we start? First, we have to address the root problems. That means investing in education and jobs, improving governments, and dealing with the legacy of colonialism. We also need to get serious about stopping terrorist groups like Boko Haram, but military force isn't enough. We need a plan that addresses the reasons why people join these groups. And let's not forget about talking and making peace. Niger and Nigeria need to fix their relationship and rebuild trust. That means addressing past wrongs, working together, and building a shared identity. Section 8, Reclaiming Sovereignty, a call for African solutions. Now you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but who's going to do it? That's the big question. Other countries can help, but ultimately it's up to the people of Niger and Nigeria. This isn't about forcing solutions on them. It's about empowering local communities, supporting groups working for change, and listening to the people most affected by the conflict. Africa is not just a continent with problems. It's a continent with potential, history, culture, and resilient people. It's time the world recognized that. So, let's stop thinking of Africa as a continent that needs saving. Let's focus on African ingenuity, innovation, and leadership. The solutions to Africa's problems won't come from Europe or America. They'll come from Africans. Section 9. A plea for peace. Your role in amplifying their voices. We've reached the end of our journey, but this is just the beginning of a new chapter. We've explored the Niger-Nigeria conflict, delved into its deep-rooted causes, and envisioned a brighter, more peaceful future. But now comes the hard part. What are we going to do about it? How can we, as individuals and as a collective, make a difference? This isn't some far-off problem that doesn't concern us. This is a human crisis happening right now, affecting real people, real families, and real communities. And we all have a responsibility to do something, no matter how small it may seem. I'm not asking you to become experts on West Africa or to drop everything and move there. But I'm asking you to stay informed, to learn more, and to challenge the stories that create stereotypes and misinformation. Educate yourself and others. Support organizations that are on the ground, helping those in need, share the stories of those affected by the conflict, amplify their voices on social media, and in your communities.